Hello, I'm Ronnie Beck, and this presentation today is for partial accomplishment of the course Teaching History through Liberty University, and the following is a presentation that could be given to a military history course with an emphasis on the Civil War. This presentation would go something like this. Good day, esteemed scholars. Today we delve into the heart of General Grant's Overland Campaign, a military endeavor that was strategically significant and fraught with profound ethical dilemmas. We will dissect Grant's objectives and strategies, and in doing so, confront the critical question of the ethics of warfare. The Overland Campaign was a pivotal military operation during the American Civil War. Conducted by General Ulysses S. Grant, its objective was to break the stalemate between Union and Confederate forces. This campaign marked a critical turning point in the conflict, and General Grant's strategy played a central role in reshaping the war's course. General Grant's strategy for the Overland Campaign was one of total warfare and attrition. While strategically effective, the approach raises ethical questions about the cost of war and the morality of such tactics. So, what were Grant's objectives? One of Grant's primary objectives was to apply continuous strategic pressure on General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army. This involved maintaining a relentless offensive against Confederate forces, preventing them from regrouping or launching effective counterattacks. Grant recognized that a sustained offensive would keep the Confederates on the defensive, disrupt their operations, and ultimately wear down their forces. He aimed to erode the Confederate Army's capacity to continue the fight by maintaining this pressure. Grant also sought to disrupt and interfere with the normal functioning and operations of the Confederate Army. This involved targeting their supply lines, communication networks, and logistical infrastructure. By disrupting Confederate operations, Grant aimed to undermine their ability to coordinate and sustain their military efforts effectively. This strategy weakened the Confederate Army's logistical and operational capacity over time. Grant's ultimate goal was to isolate and contain General Lee's army. He aimed to cut off Lee from potential sources of reinforcement or resupply, effectively isolating him from other Confederate forces. Isolating General Lee's army was essential to Grant's strategy to weaken the Confederacy's overall military capabilities. By isolating Lee, Grant sought to create a situation where the Confederate Army would be compelled to surrender or face defeat. So, what is total warfare? Well, total warfare is a military strategy that aims to mobilize all available resources, both military and civilian, and directs them towards achieving a complete and unconditional victory in a conflict. It involves utilizing not only the armed forces, but also the entire population, industry, and economy of a nation. To support the war effort, this approach often includes targeting civilian infrastructure and resources to weaken the enemy's ability to continue to fight. Total warfare was a departure from earlier, more limited forms of warfare, as it sought to exert maximum pressure on the enemy by targeting their entire socio-economical structure. Now, attrition, on the other hand, is a military strategy refers to gradual wearing down or reduction of an enemy's strength through sustained pressure. The goal of attrition is to exhaust the enemy's capacity to resist, thereby achieving victory. This approach may involve prolonged battles or campaigns to erode the enemy's manpower and material. Attrition has been a prominent strategy in various historical conflicts, particularly during prolonged warfare. Now let us delve into specific instances where General Grant applied the principles of total warfare in the Overland Campaign. Grant recognized the critical importance of disrupting Confederate supply lines. By severing or disrupting these routes, he aimed to deprive General Lee's army of essential resources, including food, ammunition, and medical supplies. Grant's extended siege of Petersburg is a prime example of total warfare. By isolating the city and subjecting it to a prolonged siege, he sought to not only cut off its military supplies, but also to affect the civilian population, pressuring them to capitulate. Grant ordered the destruction of crucial railroad lines in the region, which hindered the Confederate movements and supply lines and disrupted civilian transportation and commerce. Grant also put an emphasis on fortifications, such as constructing the Union's extensive network of trenches. This reflects a commitment to total warfare. These defensive structures not only protected Union forces, but also served to exert pressure on the Confederates, restricting their mobility. It is essential to acknowledge that civilians were not untouched by these actions. The destruction of infrastructure and disruption of daily life had a significant impact on the civilian population in the region. Grant's strategic choices in the Overland Campaign had a lasting economic impact on the southern states. The destruction of infrastructure and disruption of industry contributed to the long-term challenges faced by the South in the post-war period. As we examine these examples, grappling with the ethical implications is crucial. Targeting civilian infrastructure, even in pursuit of military objectives, forces us to confront the moral complexities of warfare. Grant's application of total warfare in the Overland Campaign prompts us to reflect on the enduring debates about the ethics of warfare and the cost of war. In this slide, we will explore the profound psychological impact of total warfare on soldiers and civilians during the Overland Campaign. Soldiers lived in a state of perpetual alertness. The continuous threat of engagement and battle uncertainty took a toll on their mental well-being. Prolonged exposure to harsh environmental conditions, including extremes of weather, inadequate shelter, and scarce provisions, tested the mental resilience of soldiers. The intensity and frequency of combat situations led to high combat stress. Many soldiers experienced symptoms akin to what we now understand as post-traumatic stress disorder. The impact on civilians, the civilians in the conflict zone lived in a constant fear and anxiety. The disruption of daily life, the destruction of homes and infrastructure, and the proximity of armed conflict created a pervasive atmosphere of uncertainty. The destruction of livelihoods and disruption of economic activity severely put a hardship on the civilians. Many face challenges securing basic necessities, increasing their stress and anxiety. The loss of loved ones and devastation of communities were significant sources of psychological trauma for civilians. The toll of war on families and communities was immense. And despite these challenges, it's essential to note the remarkable resilience displayed by soldiers and civilians during this period. Many found ways to cope with the extraordinary stresses imposed by total warfare. As we examine the psychological impact of total warfare, we're reminded of the immense human cost of conflict. It underscores the imperative to consider the well-being of individuals and communities affected by war. Here is simply a graph for context to facilitate the human cost of casualties during the campaign. This slide will reflect on how the lessons drawn from General Grant's total warfare strategy in the Overland Campaign are relevant in modern conflicts. Just as in Grant's time, modern military leaders often face the challenge of achieving strategic objectives contending with complex geopolitical and tactical considerations. The enduring dilemma persists. How do we balance the imperative of achieving military goals with the ethical considerations of minimizing harm to civilian populations and respecting international and humanitarian laws? In the digital age, information warfare has become a crucial and component. Understanding and leveraging the role of information in shaping public perception and decision making is paramount. Technological advancements enable precision targeting, minimizing collateral damage. However, the ethical use of such capabilities remains a subject of intense debate. Lessons from history emphasize the importance of safeguarding non-combatants, ensuring their safety, and providing for their basic needs in conflict zones. Addressing the psychological and socio-economic aftermath of conflict is vital. Providing support for affected populations is a moral imperative. And then where we're looking at ethical oversight, upholding international humanitarian law and human rights standards is essential. Leaders must be held accountable for actions that breach these principles. The role of civil society, advocacy groups, and media in holding governments and military institutions accountable for their actions cannot be underestimated. The Overland Campaign's total warfare strategy serves as a historical touchstone, prompting us to reflect on the ethical dimensions of contemporary warfare. As scholars and global citizens, we must continue this dialogue and seek solutions that reconcile strategic imperatives with ethical considerations. We have explored the concept of total warfare, which involves targeting enemy troops and the resources and infrastructure that support them. We have detailed how General Grant applied total warfare in the Overland Campaign, including disrupting supply lines, besieging cities, and targeting infrastructure. We have examined the psychological toll of total warfare on soldiers and civilians, underlying the human cost of such tragedies. And we have considered how the lessons from the Overland Campaign resonate in contemporary warfare, emphasizing the need to balance strategic imperatives with ethical considerations. General Grant's strategy in the Overland Campaign was one of total warfare and attrition. While strategically effective, it raises enduring questions about the cost of war and the morality of such tactics. As scholars and informed citizens, we must discuss warfare's ethics, hold leaders accountable for their actions, and seek ways to minimize the human toll of conflict. By reflecting on history, we again gain insights into the complexities of warfare, enabling us to contribute to a more ethical and in our contemporary global forces now. If you have any questions or want to continue this discussion, please feel free to reach out. Our pursuit of knowledge and ethical understanding is an ongoing journey. This concludes our lecture on General Grant's strategy in the Overland Campaign and the ethics of warfare.